Alright, hey, how's everybody doing? I'm sorry that I haven't been doing a Beatles video or anything else. I've been doing some other videos about other topics that I'm interested in, but there's been a lot of lag time, so I do apologize for that. A couple things here that have been going on with me. I took a leave of absence from work, and I'm in a new band, which I'm sure some of you have seen on my page here. So a lot of things have been taking up my time, but I decided I'm going to do this unedited like I see a lot of people who subscribe to me are actually doing. So I'm not going to be clever here, and I truly am not going to edit this. I have my cell phone timer that I'm going to start when at 12 minutes. So if you hear the alarm go off, that means it's time for me to stop talking, and I certainly will. But anyways, another thing, there really hasn't been too much Beatles stuff happening as far as releases. The Lennon vinyl box set just came out, and I haven't gotten it yet because they're going to be selling them separately in August. So I'm going to start buying them separately. I have a lot of them already on vinyl, and it would be kind of nice to finally get a clean copy of the Plastic Ono Band that has a repro of the UK label, which is the way it's going to be. They're going from digital to analog. Digital to analog as opposed to analog the way they did on the mono. I have since had a chance to re-listen to the 2012 vinyl remasters that came out based on the 2009 digital remasters, and in retrospect now I have no fault with them because a lot of new vinyl anyways comes from digital. So if you have, for example, if you happen to buy the new Sarah Bareilles album, and I'm a huge fan of Sarah, and I bought her latest album on vinyl. You know, they don't use tape anymore, so they did a digital analog to vinyl. So in retrospect, it's not bad. I didn't come across a lot of issues that other people had, so I re-listened to them, and I rethought my thinking on them. That being said, what I want to talk about today, this is going to be my first sort of review of a Beatles solo album, not of a reissue. And I'm going to talk about one here because a friend of mine and I were having a conversation about Paul McCartney and how Paul sometimes needs somebody to say no to him. Sometimes he feels that if he has a good idea, that if he has an idea, it's a good idea. And this is not to criticize Paul. It's basically, I think he's aware of his legacy and he's aware of what he does, and he at times thinks that because he's Paul McCartney, he could pretty much do whatever he wants, and we could have a conversation on his classical pieces, and that's going to be coming here. But after Linda passed, rest in peace, he always had Linda to bounce ideas off of. If John wasn't there, he had Linda, and Linda was up front and would tell him what was good and what wasn't good. I think that's why Tug of War is such a brilliant album. And even Pipes of Peace, I think, is a really good album. Fab Four, Free for All could diss that album all they want to. It holds a special place in my heart, Pipes of Peace. It really does. Got that on vinyl, Christmas of '84. But after Linda passed, the solo album, Driving Rain, I'll be honest, I played it one time, and I haven't cared to play it since. Now, I like Memory Almost Full. I haven't played New that much. I don't know why. And Kisses on the Bottom, I expected great things from Paul. After all, he did, to me, a better rock and roll oldies album than John did with Run Devil Run. And we could talk, and I plan on talking about that one at some point. Excuse me. But after Driving Rain, he started to do another album with the same producer, David Kahn. But he was unsure of the direction, so he approached George Martin and said, who's a good producer out there that you know? George Martin suggested Nigel Godrich, who is Radiohead's producer. And I'm a huge Radiohead fan. And I think Nigel does for Radiohead what George Martin did for the Beatles. Let's face it, around the time of Revolver, up to when they broke up, they were co-production efforts anyways. You know, the Beatles were doing much twiddling of the knobs themselves as much as George Martin and Jeff Emmerich and Ken Scott. But he suggested Nigel Godrich. And Paul had liked Radiohead. He likes Travis, who Nigel's worked with. Air is another great band that Nigel's worked with. But he was kind of unsure if it would work. And when he met Nigel, I think Paul finally had somebody in his solo career to treat him as an equal, not as Paul McCartney, the big icon. Oh yeah, Paul, we'll do whatever you say. Oh, it's brilliant, Paul. Paul had somebody there to say no to him. And that's what happened. And that's why I feel Chaos and Creation in the Backyard is one of Paul's best solo albums of recent years, especially of the 2000s. A close second would be Memory Almost Full. But this, he had Nigel there. And Nigel was not going to play, "Oh, that's good, Paul, you're Paul McCartney." And some friction happened, because a couple of songs he played to Nigel, and Nigel would say, "Paul, that's crap." And Paul be, "No, but I'm Paul McCartney. You can't tell me that's crap." It's because you're Paul McCartney that I can tell you that's crap, based on the best work you've ever done. And Paul needs that person to say no to him. He really does. And Nigel went and did it. This has got some of the best songs of Paul's career on here. So I play this album constantly, and I keep going back to this one. I mean, Fine Line is such a brilliant track. The chord changes, the lyrics and their simplicity, but then How Kind of You is one of Paul's best ballads. I put that up there with some of the best stuff he did in Wings and the Beatles. And it has an experimental nature with the backing done with tape loops provided by him and Nigel Godrich. The big song that I remember hearing they had friction on was Riding to Vanity Fair. And Riding to Vanity Fair, I guess Nigel was unhappy with the lyric. And Paul finally had enough. And a rumor came out after this album, once the stuff started happening between him and Heather Mills. And I kind of buy it. If you want to know what the friction was between him and Heather, it's in that lyric. That's one of the most personal lyrics Paul had ever written. So I think that was a brave, brave, brave choice for him on that song, if that in fact is true. I totally buy it, that the song is about Heather and what was going on in their relationship. I totally buy it. Sonically, he's playing all the instruments on this album, and that was one of the things Nigel Godrich had done. Driving Rain was made with his touring band, Abe and Rusty, and I don't think Brian was on that album. But the first thing Nigel did was take him out of his comfort zone. Okay, we're not using your band, you're going to play all the instruments yourself. And that's why consistently this is such a brilliant album. I'm not one to talk about individual tracks and go track by track by track, because I'm of the whole thing that, you know, an album's got to be taken as a whole. You sit down and listen to it from beginning to end, and that tells you if an album is good or not. This, just the songs, there's not really a bad song on here. Even the quirkiness of English Tea, I like. Jenny Wren is another brilliant song. Just every song on here is a winner. And when you listen to it from start to finish, I put it up there with Tug of War. I put it up there with Band on the Run as far as Wings. I put it up there with Flaming Pie that came out in the late 90s. And that one is an album that technically shouldn't have worked, because a good chunk of it was produced by Jeff Lynne. But also a good chunk of it was done by George Martin. Produced 2 tracks. There's a couple tracks he produced himself with Steve Miller. That technically shouldn't have worked, but that has a consistent feel throughout the whole album. So I would probably say this is probably his best solo album since Flaming Pie. And Flaming Pie had great reviews at the time as well. Driving Rain, like I said, I played it one time and I didn't care to play it again, and that's telling when it comes to Paul. As far as Memory Almost Full, that's a great album. That's a different story. And New and Kisses on the Bottom, that's another topic. Maybe I need to give New a listen to again, but this is a winner from start to finish, and I'm going to say that again. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this one. If you don't own Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, or you do and you just filed it away thinking it's going to be typical contrived McCartney, it's not. He cared about these songs because he had a producer there that really kicked his butt. And sometimes people like Paul need their butts kicked. I feel that way about Prince. Prince, when he was with Wendy and Lisa, he used them as a sounding board. And then after he stopped working with them, and especially people nowadays, it's just like they're so excited to work with Prince that, you know, Prince does not use a second or third ear anymore to bounce ideas off of. Sometimes these icons need that. Paul definitely had it. Or Paul definitely needs it. He had it with John. He even had it with George and Ringo. He had it with Linda. And I kind of think he still needs that now. And this album proves what could be done if he has somebody there to really challenge him. If you haven't listened to it, give it another shot. And actually, I didn't take a full 12 minutes, so I'm just going to go and put this up the way it is. So hopefully you like it. Hopefully you like seeing my head. And I think the next thing I'm going to talk about as far as Macca, I really want to delve into his classical pieces. And that's going to be the next thing I talk about, is a discussion on his classical pieces. And thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one. And thank you for subscribing and sticking with me here. Thanks so much. And I'm going to turn the camera off. Cut scene.